Hi everybody, it's Lori here. Welcome to today's webinar on test taking tips and preparation. We're going to go over some basic study tips and we're going to go over ideas to help on the PI exams as well, especially when you're doing the transcription portion of it. So thank you everybody for coming today. All right, so let's first of all talk about some of the different learning styles because we all learn a little bit differently. As this comic says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So what this comic is about is just to say that we all learn in completely different ways. So to not feel embarrassed if, just reading and writing information doesn't help you take it in, that you need to be learning in a different style. We're all totally different. Excuse me. And even my own learning style is kind of a combination of a couple of different things. So hopefully when I describe these different learning styles, you can recognize yourself amongst these. And again, you might be more than one, and hopefully take some tips that might help you improve how you study and absorb information going forward. So there used to be three basic learning styles: the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic. But they have lately added the read and write learners. So we're going to go into that a little bit. But as it says at the bottom here, understanding your type of learning style can be beneficial for several reasons. It'll help you remember the information the first time you hear it, so you can reduce the amount of time you need to absorb it. So less study time, hopefully. It'll help you figure out which are the best and most efficient ways for you to study and to understand which types of tests you're going to excel on, which might be more difficult. We're going to go over some tips, though, for just basic tips for taking tests. So hopefully that will help out. So the first one here is obviously the auditory learner. And anyone who has ever called me to ask me a question, has read me a sentence and heard me say, just a moment, I need to find the report so I can look at it, will know I am not an auditory learner. So basically, we'll just go over some of these things. These are people who learn from listening. So writing responses to lectures they've heard. They do better with oral exams. They like to read out loud. They might want to record lectures, watch videos, and so on. Excuse me. So let's go over maybe some ways that auditory learners might be able to alter their studying for CanScribe course. So first of all, when you're going through the course material, you might want to read the text out loud. Obviously, if you learn better by hearing, this is something that is beneficial. So you also might want to watch the webinars, and I don't just mean the ones that are on Wednesdays like you're doing right now, but all of our old webinars back to 2015 are on the student forum, which I will actually I can't show you because the site is down at the moment, but there is a link to the forum in the CanScribe course page. You will use the sign-in information that was emailed to you at the very start of the course, and then log in and go to the online webinars. So you can listen to the webinars and hopefully take in information. And of course, there's the question and answer periods on Fridays, which you can take part in as well at the same time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Okay, so you can also call instructors for guidance over the phone. So if you're finding that just reading the feedback from instructors with your reports it's not sinking in, you're making the same errors over again despite having read that feedback, that might be a good hint that you need to call an instructor to just have them go over it with you verbally. Excuse me, I know with my practicum students, there are some that I can tell that they're reading the feedback, but the errors are happening again. And so I'll usually give them a call and we'll go over the repeat errors, and I usually see it clean up right after that, because just hearing me explain it rather than reading it is what does the trick. So don't be shy if that's the case for you. And then word association and rhymes, using these to help remember information. So an example of this, and some of you have heard me say this too, but back before I was medical transcriptionist, I was a massage therapist. So when I was in college for that, we actually did have to memorize a lot of the medical terminology. And so you're faced with a long list of prefixes and root words and suffixes, and it's kind of overwhelming. Those of you who have been in the body as a whole unit and seen the initial lists of these probably know what I mean. But we were taught to try to find ways to remember them that work for us. So for me, I would try to find a funny way to remember what something meant. So the example I tend to use, the word bradycardia means slow heartbeat. So the prefix brady means slow. And though this may not be super politically correct, and I think of the Brady Bunch, that they weren't the brightest, they were kind of slow. So Brady means slow, and that way I remember it. Or back in high school, I had to learn some words, and one of them was supination. So if your hand is in supination, you're a palm up. So if you're in supination, you can hold a bowl of soup in your palm, supination. Like, it doesn't have to make any sense to anybody else so long as it will help you remember it. There are also certain things that we use to help remember different bones or sets of muscles and so on. Mnemonics, where each letter of a sentence stands for something else. I'm going to show you a website a little later that will have some of those that you can use. But these are things that really do help auditory learners. But I am not an auditory learner, and that word association really helped me to memorize information. It made it less tedious to study, and I would just quiz myself every 10 or so to see how I was doing, and then I knew which ones I needed to maybe come up with a different way to remember it or try again. But I really retain the information much better using those ways of studying. So those are just some suggestions for auditory learners. I do have some resources. I'm going to go over all of these a little bit later and actually show you the sites. But obviously there's the forum for the school, which you'll find the webinars posted on. There is a site for Wikipedia that goes over medical mnemonics. So these are the ones where each letter of a sentence stands for something. So like if you're memorizing the carpal bones, you would have a sentence where each letter, first letter of the words in the sentence would stand for the first letter of one of the carpal bones to help you memorize them. And the only one I know is in fact risque, so I'm not going to say it out loud, but you can go to that site and we will show you that site a little bit later. Okay, so kinesthetic learners. These are people who have a little bit harder time sitting still studying. They have a harder time doing longer essays because, again, you're sitting still. They need to take study breaks a little bit more often and perhaps be doing something fidgety or something moving while they're studying. They do tend to prefer to learn in a hands-on way. So, of course, our course, because it's a lot of sitting at your computer and so on, you know, there might be some special things that they might have to do in order to make that work for them. So let's talk about that. So you can go online and you can find quizzes and interactive references, and I do have some to show you later. I am also going to post a PDF of this PowerPoint so that you can actually see the websites. But these are sites that you can go to and practice quizzes, and you can have pictures that you click on things and information opens up, so it's more interactive for them. Just remember when you're doing these things to just know that there might be a spelling error or something like that, because they're not necessarily all going to be perfect, but just they're good for general practice. Creating flashcards for study material and review, and then perhaps reviewing these while you're walking on a treadmill or doing something active that you actually know that you're safe. You don't want to be walking down the street looking at flashcards and walk out into the street or stuff like that. But I mean, if you have a recumbent bike or a treadmill or something that you can do while you're studying so that your body is moving while you're doing the studying, this is something that might benefit a kinesthetic learner. Keep your fingers busy while you study. So this is, again, doing that, keeping your body moving in some sort of way. So typing your notes out into Word documents or writing notes out with your hands, you're keeping your fingers are busy while you're working. You might be someone who wants a fidget spinner or something while you're reading, just something to keep you moving. Take frequent short breaks if you find sitting too long is difficult. All right, so that also would mean if you're doing a test and you need a break for 5 minutes to save it, walk around, do what you need to do for a short break and come back. Okay, so I've got a bunch of interactive resources and we will get to these a bit later. I just want to show them so that they're there in the PDF when you download them, or if you decide to download it later. Okay, visual learners, this is very much me. So these are people who learn by seeing things and somewhat reading things, because that's the same as visual, but these are people who like to take notes a lot. That's the big thing. You tend to make lists. So like every day I've got a to-do list of what I need to do. They like things to be highlighted in different colors and stuff like that. They do need it to be fairly quiet when they're studying. So let's look at a bit of that. So again, the taking notes, and then you might want to highlight important information. You might want to underline things, circle things. Some people like to have different topics highlighted in different colors, like all kinds of color coding, things like that. It depends on the person. For myself, I need to write it out in order for it to be absorbed. And then if I get lucky and I'm in a test and I'm having trouble, sometimes I do not have a photographic memory, but sometimes I can actually picture my notes that I wrote because I am visual. So on occasion, I can get an answer because I can picture what I wrote down. So that is one suggestion. Again, the flashcards, you're going to see this again. This is almost a universal thing because it's the action of writing it, taking the notes, absorbing that information, and then practicing them later. And also it's more fun to practice because it's like a game. You're quizzing yourself. So those are quite handy. You can do them by hand, or there's also some online websites that you can do them. And I know I had them on my iPad. There was an app for them, which is great. So there's different things you can do. Use the charts and the diagrams in the course material to your advantage. So if you're visual, if you can picture a chart, if seeing a chart with the diagrams helps you picture steps, like say you're doing a surgery. This isn't studying, but this is another way to use these to your advantage. And they're doing a section that you maybe don't know the anatomy as well there. You can always Google an anatomical chart of that area, and then you can see it and you can say, okay, they're cutting this, and you can see it, picture it, and then they're doing this, and see the diagram, the labels on the chart to follow along with what's happening, help you picture it in your head. And then again, watching the webinars and other online videos. So there are websites where you can find surgical procedures. There are websites where you can see them do orthopedic testing. There's a lot of YouTube videos for orthopedic tests, by the way. If it helps you picture what they're doing, if that helps you when you're doing the reports and studying, then by all means do that. Okay, so here's a bunch of resources, and again, I'm going to show these a little later. Okay, so the fourth one that's been added more recently are reading and writing learners, and I'm also this one. So these are people, again, lots of writing, taking notes, making lists. You remember information well when it's displayed as text. For me, I can't just really read it off a computer screen. It has to be on paper, and I have to take the notes. So again, everybody's completely different. These are people who like text-based input and output, reading and writing. All right, so obviously take the notes on the course material, book of style information, any instructor feedback you get. It is really handy to make notes on instructor feedback because then it has something you can look at when you're going on to your next report, that you can apply that information. You've got notes right there. If you can do it in Word and you can learn that way, then do that. Just know, like, that's handy if you're able to absorb information that way, because you can use the Control F function to search for something. So if you know you made a note, something to do with fractions, and you're trying to find it, you can just hit Control F and write fraction and find it quickly. Whereas if handwritten notes, you do have to go surfing through them with your eyes and hope to find the information that you want. But if you're someone who learns better by writing by hand, then that's what you need to do. I do suggest when you're doing this for anything to do with account specifics, just put them in a separate section, because anything to do with book of style and so on, grammar, punctuation, you can keep those notes forever, but your account specifics are only going to be for so long. So that's why I say just on a separate piece of paper or something like that, so that you can delete them when you finish the course and keep the rest. Flashcards again, there they are again. It is a little bit time consuming, but it works extremely well. So that's completely up to you. Just letting you know. Find report samples to read. That doesn't make sense, I'm sorry. So find report samples so you can see how a procedure is done. So you're going to read how the procedure was done by reading old reports. So if you're doing a cesarean section and you would perhaps like to figure out the procedure a bit in your mind before you do the report, you can go and find a sample report of a cesarean section. Make sure it's the same type of cesarean, be it transverse or there are different kinds. So just ensure that, but you can go ahead and read those instead of seeing the videos. And then again, word lists. So I know there are students who have word lists for everything. You can make a word list for terms, medications, surgical tools. You could have an Excel spreadsheet with a different page for each of those things so that it's all in one spot, but you just have to go from page to page. So those are all things that they do take time. And being someone who's like this, who needs to take notes, it's time consuming, but it's what these people need to do in order to absorb the information. So here's some more resources. And like this little guy says, let's have a look at these. So I'm just going to come out of here for a minute. And we're going to go, so here is the page that shows the different mnemonics. So here are what they're for. I'm hoping nothing super risque comes while I'm here. But you can see that there are different ways to remember things. I like going places using my very own unmanned vehicle are ways to remember the branches of the internal iliac artery. So each of those letters stands for something in those branches for you to help remember them. So that's a Wikipedia site, which normally I don't always trust Wikipedia, but you might find some good ones there just to verify the information. There's a site called getbodysmart.com, which is a great one for anatomy. So let's go into muscular since that's my favorite. And let's go into those that act on the ankle and foot. So, you know, there are different ones. I found a few on here somewhere where you would click on the muscle and it would give you more information about it too. I don't remember what chart it was, but anyways, there's all kinds of stuff here. It's a very good site. If you find that picturing the charts and doing something interactive with diagrams is something that would appeal to you and help you learn, then this is a really good website. So getbodysmart.com/organization. Cliff Notes. I was a bit surprised by this, but if you're someone who wants to do some practice tests, there is some biology in here. There's also some grammar and stuff like that. So you have to find the kind of biology that suits you, but let me see. There's grammar. So some different quizzes, prepositional phrases, verbs, clauses, all kinds of stuff. So you can do practice tests. Especially if you're someone who finds that testing makes you nervous, these practice tests are great. And I think you might find that you know more than you realize, but you can quickly find the spots that are weak for you and you know where to focus on when you're studying. Okay, so another human anatomy one. This one is maybe the one I was thinking. This is also a very good one. So we're going to go to human anatomy. We'll go to the muscular system, which being the massage therapist is my favorite. So this one has where you can zoom in on things, click on it. So I just clicked on that. It's giving me more information. And then I hover over each thing. It gives me more information. So this is another really excellent site for anatomy. And physiology, I think, was in there too. All the different systems. So that is innerbody.com. Okay, so then there's a couple here for creating flashcards and practice quizzes. This one seems to be one you have to sign up, but Audrey highly recommended this one, Quizlet.com and StudyBlue.com as well for creating flashcards. I wish that I knew which app I had used on my iPad, because there was a really good one. I just searched in the iStore or iTunes store for flashcards, and there was a lot of them that came up, and I used them to study for my HDI CHDS designations. So I was studying a lot of terminology. So this site is studyblue.com. The other one was quizlet.com. So again, I'm going to put a PDF of this webinar up so that you can flip through the pages and you can find the websites. There's another one here. I don't know if it's sporcel.com or sporkle.com, but there's a bunch of medical quizzes and games and stuff like that so you can practice. I don't want to go through these fairly quickly so we don't run out of time. Cover your eyes if you're sensitive. This is a site where you can go to watch various surgeries. You can also go on YouTube and find a number of surgeries being performed. If you're someone that finds watching a surgery helps you absorb that information and you have a strong stomach, go for it. Let's see here. This one is a good one for if you're someone who wants to find some information about orthopedic tests. They are organized by anatomical location. So if you're looking for a name of one even, this is a good site. But you can also go in and you can find videos of a lot of these. Any of these, I think, with the blue, there's videos of how they do them. So they'll show you. So if that helps you picture it, great. If you're just looking for names, they're here, orthopedic tests. So that's a good site. Let's see here. mtsamples.com is related to mtdictionary.com, which a lot of you know is a favorite of mine. So this is a site where you can go and find sample reports to read. So this is helpful if you're someone who learns from reading text, but also sometimes if you're doing a report and you're looking for a certain term, you can go and find a surgery that's the same. So let's go to obstetrics. And you can find the same kind of surgery, or you can search for the exact one that you're looking for there. So that's a good site. And then the last one is really just more, this has some sample reports in it. So if you look along the side here, medicaltranscriptionwordhelp.com. I have mentioned this in my research webinar. So you can look up common terms and words for different specialties, but you can also look up operative report samples. So these ones, you're not going to be able to do a search as well. You can do Control F and see if you can find certain things, but you can see here what they're doing. So that's a good site for them too. All right, so we're going to close that for a minute. We'll go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so test taking tips. So just breathe. So a lot of us get nervous, we get in our head a bit too much, and we start to make mistakes that we might normally not do, and we might get a little bit careless on occasion because we get anxious and we just want to be done. So let's get into this. I just see a couple comments. I want to make sure that they weren't questions. Okay, good, we're good. Okay. So remember that the test is open book. So if you're doing a CanScribe test, be it a chapter test, a quiz, or your PI exam, the theory portion of it, these are open book tests. So you can always have your test open in one tab and the course material in another and flip back and forth between them. So just keep that in mind. Follow the resource hierarchy listed in your account specifics. So if you go into your account specifics for the course, I think it's the very last page, it will go over the hierarchy of information. So if you are doing a test, the first place you want to look would be the course material. If you can't find it there, look in Book of Style, and you might be surprised what you can find in there, especially in section 4, just the specialty chapters 13 to 24. So there's a chapter just on pharmacology, just on cardiology. There's orthopedics and neurology, which would cover your muscular, skeletal, and neuro chapters. So you might be really surprised by what you can find in your Book of Style if you just search. You want to read the directions very carefully to make sure you're doing what it asks. And even things that people don't think of, like if it's asking you to fill in the blank and the blank is the first word in a sentence, you need to capitalize that word because it's the first word in the sentence. If it's a word in the middle of the sentence and it's not a proper noun, don't capitalize it. If you're expanding an abbreviation and none of those words are eponyms or proper nouns, you're not capitalizing anything. But if you're expanding an abbreviation and one of those words is a proper noun, like an eponym, you would need to capitalize that particular word. So think about these things when you're doing your tests. Read the questions and possible answers very carefully. Look for keywords such as never and always. And that can help you weed out some of the possible answers that don't work because of these keywords. And also things like if they're looking for a Latin plural of a word, make sure when you find a plural version of that word, you're verifying it's Latin. These keywords make all the difference. Use researching and critical thinking skills to come to a conclusion. So if you've done your research and there's more than one answer that can be correct, which we're going to get to in a little bit. Use your critical thinking skills. Which of these is more correct? Or sometimes it might just be taking an extra step from what's in the course material, drawing your own conclusions from a little bit of added research. Medical transcription is very research-based, so these are things that are important to practice. Think about the English meaning of technical and medical words to help understand the question and possible answers. So if you're someone who is able to write things out and finds that seeing things in writing is better, you might want to write the question out and then have little notes about what the meaning of those words are, if that helps you. Especially if you're not as familiar with a certain word, go and look it up, write the meaning down, make sure you're understanding what it's asking you and what the answers are saying. Okay, always check your spelling. So even if you think you know how a word is spelled, you might want to double check it, because I've seen a lot of times students have spelled a word wrong in their answer, and it's a word they would normally know how to spell properly, but they just go in a little bit too quick, or nerves got the best of them. So just double check those things. If you catch yourself thinking negatively, try to think positively. I can do this. The answers will come. There's a lot of people who find that positive thinking goes a long way. So I'm just throwing that out there for those that appeals to. Stay calm. Take short breaks if needed. So make sure that you're breathing. Try to stay calm. If you're getting anxious, you might want to go get up, get a drink of water, maybe do a couple jumping jacks, like whatever works for you to just try to calm yourself down before you come back and sit down. Because I know you get anxious, people will forget things we normally know, or we might rush or make some rash decisions that are not correct. So try to stay calm. Just do the best that you can. Save your work as you go along and before you take a break. So when you're doing a chapter test, make sure you save each of your answers as you go. And then you might want to go back and double check everything before you submit it. Save again before you submit. If you need to take a break for a few minutes, save. Take note of the questions you're unsure of and come back to review them again. So when I did my my HDI CHDS exam, for example, it is a huge exam. It is not open book. It's a lot of multiple choice before you get to anything transcription. And I would answer the ones I knew right away, save, come back to the ones that I wasn't sure of at the very end, because I wanted, those tests were timed. You only have so much time. So I needed to get in as many answers as I knew were correct first, and then come back to those I wasn't as sure of. If all else fails, Google it and see what you can find. You might be surprised. If you've gone through the whole hierarchy of information and you can't find that answer, try to Google it, see what you can find. Make sure you verify your information. Okay, so tips for multiple choice. So when I was in high school, I was taught a couple of things. So when I'm taking a test and it's on the computer, I always have a notepad beside me and I will write, for example, question number 1, A, B, C, D. If you're someone who learns from writing, or if you find that writing that question out by hand will help you absorb it, do it, whatever it takes. Then what I had learned was that normally you can take out a couple of the options quickly. So the eyes are located in the head, knees, forearms, or the orbits. We know the eyes are not in the knees, and we know we're not in the forearms. So we're just going to cross those out. So on my page, I cross out B and C, and now I've got a 50-50 shot. I know it's A or I know it's D. Now we know the eyes are in the head. That could be correct, but the orbits are actually the holes in the skull where the eyes sit. So that would be more correct. So if you get one of these things where either one could apply, which one fits better, which is the most correct of the two. It doesn't happen a lot, but I have had it happen before in various courses where it could be one or the other, but one of them really is more correct. So I'm just giving you an example of that. So then we could just go with I would circle it on my page so that if anything were to ever happen with a technical issue, I've got my answers all written down. So yeah, so that's how I go about that. Okay, so the PIE transcription preparation. Everybody gets very nervous about their PIEs, and I did too when I took the course. That's very normal. So there's some things you want to review when you're studying for your PIE. You want to go over your account specifics. If you're doing the PIE 3, make sure you're using the correct account specifics because you're going to use different account specs for your practicum. So your PIE 3 is after your practicum, so you want to make sure you're not looking at your practicum account specs. If you've finished your practicum, get rid of your practicum account specs. If they're on your desktop, delete them. If you have printed them, recycle them. Get anything to do with those practicum account specs off your desk or anything, and then go and get the old account specs from the course, which are used for the PIE 3, review them, and just make sure you can't accidentally look at the wrong set of account specs. So just make sure for PIE 3 you're using the right ones, which are the regular ones from the course. You want to review your account specs carefully before you do a PIE. You want to review your punctuation guide. And I also use that when I was transcribing as a student. So if you're someone who finds the book of style a little bit overwhelming in the punctuation section, you can look at the punctuation guide's examples and see which sentences look like they're structured in the same way. And then most of them will say book of style reference. So you can then go into the book of style, know exactly where to go, look up more examples, and double check that you're in the right spot and you're using the right punctuation. So it's not just for grading. It's really good to learn from and to use while you're transcribing. You want to review the AHGI list of dangerous abbreviations. I do recommend reading that over at least once a week. These are abbreviations that whenever you hear them, you must expand them. So you want to read those over and know them well enough that when you hear one, you'll remember, oh, that's on the list, and go and look it up. Some of them we'll memorize over time because we write them every day, but other ones you might just hear once in a while, and that's why reviewing it regularly is needed, but especially before a test or a PIE exam. For each PIE exam, there will be a little bit of course material to help you get ready, so make sure you're reading that over carefully. And then again, your book of style. Where can you find certain information? So you want to flip through your book of style to see where information is located. So each section is about a certain topic, and then there are chapters within those that are specified. So there might be one on numbers. There's one on, my mind's going blank, but different topics, plurals and stuff like that. So each one has its own chapter. Just know where information is. Look at those specialty chapters. I can't say that enough. You want to look at chapters 13 and to 24 for the specialty chapters. Now, someone just asked a question. I just need to get to that. Are the dangerous abbreviations just for the course, or would they be applicable in the working world too? They're applicable in the working world too. You might have an account that just gives you this set they're concerned about, and they won't worry about the rest. And there are others that are concerned about the entire list. So it will depend on your account, but they will definitely apply in the working world as well. So I just made sure that I read them over every week or two, because there was the odd one I heard once in a blue moon, and I know if I didn't review it, I would have completely missed it. So it's always really handy to read that over. Okay, so again, a lot of those things I just mentioned, if you hit content on your course page and then go to overview, there are links to a lot of these. So there's your punctuation guide, there's your account specifics, there's your HEI list of dangerous abbreviations. It has all of them on one page together. So unlike the Book of Style where it's in a number of pages, they're all in one spot there. So make sure you have a look at those. So again, that's content and an overview. Okay, reviewing your previous transcriptions. So this is something I found really valuable as a student to do. Go back through your instructor graded reports, read the feedback, make a list or checklist of the common errors you make, study these, ask for help with these issues if needed. Check this before you start your PI transcriptions and then again before submitting each report. So you want to make sure that you haven't made any of those common repeat errors again. So if you need to make a checklist, do that. Make notes on your feedback. If you find there's something that you've been doing repeatedly and you're looking at the Book of Style references the instructors gave you and you're still not quite grasping it, give us a call. We're happy to go over those things with you. So how do you do this? So when you're in DictaScribe, if you look at the very top of the page, there's your student history. When you go into the student history, and I'm going to show you this in a second, you can adjust your from and to dates. So you're going to have to back up your from date likely. You can change it so that you're just seeing ones that are instructor graded. You can change it to just a certain chapter. So let me just get out of this for a second. So we are using an example, a fake student here. This is Audrey's dog. So here I am on my main home page. So I'm going to go to student history. And let's just say I want to look at all the instructor graded ones. And I know that Max has been a lazy dog and hasn't done anything since 2016. So I'm going to go way back. Now, sometimes these from and to dates, see how I had 16 in it. Anyways, sometimes they need to be fiddled with a bit. And I hope it cooperates. It was working yesterday. And here. Yeah, of course everybody's watching, so it doesn't want to work. Let's see here. I think there's some in August. There we go. Yay. Okay, so I can change it to a certain chapter. I can change it to just the instructor graded ones. So if you're going to go review your instructor graded ones, I would just narrow it down to that. So in this time period, that's the only instructor graded one. Hit details to open it up. Have a look at it. Hit the back button when you're done. But what you want to do is look at the feedback at the bottom and see over the course of maybe the last couple of months or maybe even just your last 6 or 7 reports. What are the errors that you keep making that you see? We all have an Achilles heel. There's always something. When I was a student, it was the compound modifiers drove me nuts. So see what your weaknesses are. Take notes on those. Look at the Book of Style references they gave you. And if it's still not quite clicking, just call us. Or if you're someone who learns better from hearing us explain it, give us a call. Just make sure that you've got things as clear as you can before you go into your PI. So again, if I just wanted to look at everything I did in skeletal, for example, there's that. I can narrow it down to just ones that I graded or the instructors graded. So you can see your required ones. I could do just my required ones for all chapters. So the ones I graded, which he's done a very poor job of. Anyway, so you can see how this works. So just adjust your from date to whenever you started the course, or if you're doing PI 2, maybe try to figure out when you finished your PI 1, so it would cover the information between PI 1 and PI 2, whatever you need. But this works quite well to see where your weak spots are. Okay, and if you're wondering how to get DictaScribe open when you are finished everything, just any of the chapters you've done, scroll to the bottom and hit any of these platforms that have the purple box with the arrow. That will take you there. Okay, And again, don't be shy to call us. This is why we're here. We all love to help the students, and it makes our day when we can help the bells go off for somebody. So don't be shy to call about it. Okay, so let's just go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so general tips for the transcription portions of your PIE. This guy types like probably a lot of our parents type. Anyways, I thought he was cute. Okay, stay calm. I've mentioned it before, but I have seen some of the best students go into a PIE and make mistakes that I have never made them seen before or seen them make before. And it's just because they're nervous and they forget things that they normally know how to do, or they're proofreading a little bit too quick because they're nervous and they're missing things. So try to stay calm as best you can. And again, I truly mean it. Stay calm. It's so important to try to stay calm when you're doing your PIE transcriptions. So when you're doing your transcriptions, remember there are up to 2 alternates if needed. So if you open one of your reports in the transcription sections and you don't like that report, we all have different accents and dictators we struggle with that maybe someone else is fine with. We are all completely different people. If you open it up and you go, uh-oh, just take a deep breath and keep in the back of your head, there is an alternate report if I get below 90 on this. So there's a safety net, so let's not panic. I'm going to do the best I can with this particular report with all of my knowledge and researching skills, and hopefully I won't need the rewrite, but if I need it, it's there. Sometimes just knowing there's that safety net is enough to help someone stay calm enough that they can focus and do what needs to be done on that report and maybe not even need that rewrite. If you do get a rewrite, don't get upset about it. It's not uncommon, and you can just see the silver lining in it. Look at the feedback from the 4 original reports you had. Take notes on it. If there's anything that you need help with, an explanation of any feedback or anything like that, call us and we'll go over it and get things really clear in your mind, and then have all that information fresh in your head and go and do your rewrite or rewrites. There's up to 2. If you get below 90 on more than 2 reports, you're only going to get 2 alternates. If you get below 90 on 1 report, you'll get 1 alternate. So please keep that in mind. But sometimes it's enough to just help you, again, stay calm while you're doing your reports. Stay active on the CanScribe course page. So if you are doing a report in Dicto, so let's just going to go back to the main page, pick a report. So say I'm working on this report. Every so often, you want to go back to your course page and just click on anything just to keep you signed in. Because if you go inactive on this CanScribe course page, it will sign you out unbeknown to you, and you will be working in DictaScribe and your information is no longer saved. Any of your work will no longer be saved. I have found that it seems to be around an hour. The school says 2 hours, but I would just rather be safe than sorry. So maybe 15 to 20 minutes, just come over here. I usually just go between overview and bookmarks because they load instantly, and that just keeps me active, and then I'll come back and I'll hit save. And when I finish the entire report, call me paranoid, I just come over here, click on something, come back, save it, and then submit it. Because I know I'm signed in, I know it has saved everything I just did, and I will submit it. Please be careful that you do not hit the tab key, because the tab key will submit a report immediately. So keep your fingers away from that tab key. If you have long fingers like I do, just really be careful with what you're doing with any of the keys on that left-hand side of your keyboard, okay? So that's really important information to know. Okay, well, we did stay calm. Okay, save your work often. I really can't say this enough. I just went over it, but every 10, 15 minutes, just save. It just takes a second. Krista agrees with me. It's about an hour. Yeah. So that's what I have found when grading. There's been times I've had to regrade a report because I lost track of time and got signed out. So, okay, use the 48 hours given for the theory and dictations to your advantage. So you have got to cover for the theory portion of the exam, and there are 4 dictations to do. you've got 2 days. So basically, you don't need to finish the whole thing in one day and submit it. What I used to do, and this isn't going to work for everybody, but I used to do the theory in the morning of the first day, and then I would start my rough drafts of my reports. So as many blanks in them as I needed, whatever, just my rough drafts. And then I would go and get some sleep and come back with a fresh ear, and then I would listen back to my reports. Sometimes just that fresh ear is enough to go, oh, it's in, not on. That's a difference. Fill in any blanks that I still have left, proofread really carefully, and maybe take another break for a couple of hours, come back again when you're calm and you've, again, the fresh ear, and review them again. Just really go over them with a fine-tooth comb before you submit them. You've got the 2 days. Use it to your advantage. Take a break and come back and listen again with a fresh ear. I just said that. So that does really help, especially if you're feeling anxious. Just walking away for a while, taking a break, go outside, whatever it is for a bit, come back, and you'd be surprised sometimes what you can pick up that you missed before. Research and verify terms and information. I can't tell you how many spelling errors I see in PI reports. So even if it's a speech recognition report, make sure all those terms are spelled correctly, sound alike words. Any term you're not 100% sure of, double check it. If you want more information about researching wildcard search sites, verifying information, I did do a webinar in January called Filling in the Blanks, and it will show you how to do all of that as quickly and efficiently as possible. Proofread very carefully. Try reading each sentence out loud. So if you're like me and read quickly and you try to proofread like in your mind and you read it like a book, sentence by sentence, just trucking your way through there, your mind will put in what it thinks should be there, not always noticing what is there. So if it says the bruises is healing, your brain's just going to say R and skim right over it. And you've completely missed a grammar error there. So what I learned to do when I was a student was I would read a sentence out loud and stop. And then I would ask myself a bunch of questions about it to double check that it was correct, which we're going to get into, and then move on to the next sentence. And that would force me to slow down. And certain things really stand out when you read them out loud, like the bruises is, hurts me to say it. So there are things that you'll notice like, oh, that's not a complete sentence, or that doesn't make sense, or something sounds off there. So try that out. It actually does help. And then over time, you can start to do it in your head, but following that same pattern of reading one sentence at a time. And then as you speed up, you can just read the spots that feel off to you, that you can't figure out what is wrong. And Chris just said that this really helps. I still, if I'm proofreading something and I'm like, what is wrong there? Something is off. I'll read it out loud. It feels very silly at first, but it really did help. Okay, so these are things, again, to ask yourself, does this make sense? Is this a complete sentence? So you want to look at your sentence. If it can't stand alone as a sentence on its own, you might be missing a word, so go back and listen. Was that meant to be the afterthought of the sentence before, or was that actually the introductory element of the next sentence? Excuse me, did you mishear something? Does that make sense? I've seen some nonsensical sentences come in where I thought if they had read them back to themselves, they probably would kick themselves, and it happens. So try that. You want to check for grammar, book of style errors, all those things. When you're done your dictation and you think you're ready to submit it, you want to scroll from top to bottom one last time and look for anything out of place, account-specific issues, dangerous abbreviations, book of style formatting rules, and so on. So just double check all that stuff. Use critical thinking skills. Excuse me, I need a drink. I'm sorry. Think of the information given in that report. So if the patient has a heart disease, keep that in your mind throughout the report. Think of each report as a story about that particular patient. So if they are talking about the person has like hypertension, Probably some of the medications they list are going to be to treat hypertension, stuff like that. Just use those hints that are in there to help you with the report. Use your blanks wisely, but be aware of excessive use of blanks. So blanks should not hold more than 4 or 5 words. You also want to be careful that you're not just blanking everything. If you're able to make a guess of what a word is and it's a sensible guess, that's a real word, go ahead and make a guess if you're not 100% sure if that's the word. If you can hear any little words in between blanks, put them in there, because I've seen cases where whole sentences are blanked and I'll listen to it and be like, okay, well, a lot of that is tough to hear, but I can very clearly hear the patient in the middle of it and they didn't put it in. So put in everything you can in between blanks if you have to use blanks, and put in guesses where you can, and make sure that makes sense. Okay. All right. What do you guys have for suggestions? What other things help you that I haven't gone over? I'm sure everybody's got some different ideas of what works for them. So feel free to type in some of your tried and true methods. We've only got a few minutes left here. Excuse me. Or if you've got any questions for me, shoot. Leslie's adding the FX Sound Enhancer. So yeah, there's a program that you can download called FX Sound Enhancer. It's a free 7-day trial. Leslie, I'm not sure what it costs after that. Depends if it's on sale or not, I know. But students have found that it helps make the reports a little bit more clear because you can adjust all the bass and treble levels to what suits you the best and for each report. I did do the 7-day free trial. It definitely does help. It did affect everything else on my computer though. So I would do the 7-day free trial first. Jessica saying don't overthink or overanalyze questions to make them harder than they actually are. That's very true, Jessica. Thank you. I have found that people overthink things to the point where they've twisted the meaning of the question up in their mind. So sometimes you just need to trust that first gut reaction of what the answer is, especially if you're going back. I know when I did my last big test for AHDI, and there'd be a few questions at the end that I wasn't 100% sure of. And when I went back, if I still wasn't sure, I just went with my gut. Because a lot of times, I'm like, well, my gut, I'm not overthinking it. That's what I think is correct. Sometimes that's all you can do if you've done everything else you can. Now, keep in mind that those exams were not open book at all, but still, sometimes your gut is what works and you're not overthinking it. So just make sure you're really understanding the question well. And like I said, look for those keywords. Leslie says the pronunciation tool in the medical dictionary. Yeah, I know Stedman's has some that you can look at and you'll hit play and it will pronounce the word for you. I know the free dictionary does too. Let me try to get out of So I'll just use that as an example. So we'll just go arthroscopy. And so there's a British and a regular pronunciation. Arthroscopy. So I don't know if you guys could hear that when I hit play, but you can listen to them. Keep in mind some people will pronounce things differently, like skeletal versus skeletal, but there is that. Yeah, you can't control the speed in these playbacks, but also remember when you're doing a report, try to slow it down if you can't hear something or they're speaking too quickly. I know that I usually have it at 0.8 when I'm transcribing because it slows them down so I can catch those little in-between words, the short little words in between the big words they tend to say quickly. So that's where I like to transcribe at. And then if I can't hear something, I might slow it down a bit more. If that's distorting it, you can try speeding it up because sometimes speeding it up, it goes against all logic, but sometimes it'll pop a consonant or something enough that you can go and do a wildcard search and add an extra letter. And again, I went over these wildcard searches in the filling in the blanks webinar, and I went over drug researching a little bit in that webinar. I did another webinar just on drug researching as well. I want to say it was last year. So there's extra help with those if you want to. Go through the webinars on the student forum and see which ones might help you with what your weaknesses are. Krista has another really good point that lowering the volume sometimes helps. I know when I'm listening to reports, I do find it better that it's a little bit quieter. It's a little less distorted sounding in my ear. I have very sensitive ears when it comes to volume. I don't like things loud. So I will turn it down a little bit to just try to make it a little bit more clear. So yeah, these are all really great suggestions. Anna says the tone of voice changes with the speed. Yep, that's very true too. So slow it down, speed it up. Try the FX Sound Enhancer. Like I said, it's a free 7-day trial, so it doesn't hurt. Yeah, there's all kinds of different things you can do. I know that you can adjust bass and treble on your own computer sound system normally. It is not easy with Windows 10, so you might want to Google how to do that. Or it might just find that you have preset sound settings on your system like jazz or rock. And so you can find a report that's not so stellar in sound quality and go through those different sounds to see which ones you like. Personally, this goes against how I like my music, but I usually for transcriptions like a little bit more bass, a little less treble, because I have found over the years a little bit more bass takes some of that scratch out that's in the reports, because a lot of these are recorded over the phone, so there's a bit of a scratch. I just find that takes it down a little bit. When I was using the FX Sound Enhancer, though, I actually found I wanted more treble to bring the voice to the forefront. It's just weird. Everybody's different, and different programs will work differently, but those are all things you can play with. So see if that helps. But just remember for the PI, use those 2 days to your full advantage. Stay calm. You cannot be calling the school, though, to ask for help on where to find information. You're going to have to follow the hierarchy of information and find the information. And like I said, if all else fails, if you've gone to the course material, you've gone through the book of style, you've gone through all the Stedman stuff, you still can't find it, look online and see what you can find and verify information. Okay, so just try to stay calm with these things as best you can. If you need to take a break and splash cold water in your face or whatever you need to do, go ahead. And also, it doesn't hurt to review your course material just quickly before you do the theory to just remember where information is. If you're going through your course material for the first time, like say you just started the pharmacology section, you might want to take notes on where certain information is covered. So say in the muscular system, you might write muscles of the body. This is where that information is found. Back, front, head, trunk muscles are under muscles of the body. And then, disorders are found under patho. Just things to help you find information quickly. But it's open book, so don't forget that. All right. So I'm going to let you guys go. For anybody who's coming up to apply, I wish you all the best. And I hope everybody has a great day today. Thanks for coming.